First strike. High Admiral Vexthor stood at the command deck of the Ketheri flagship Eternal Dominion, his four eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. For centuries, the Ketheri Empire had expanded unchallenged through the galaxy, their superior technology and militant culture crushing any resistance they encountered. But today, something was different. High Admiral, we've detected an unknown vessel at the edge of the Proxima system, reported First Observer Krell, her scaled fingers dancing across the control interface. Configuration doesn't match any known species in our database. Vexthor's secondary hearts quickened with anticipation. A new species meant new territory to conquer, new resources to claim, and new subjects to add to the Empire's glory. "Show me," he commanded. The hologram shifted, revealing a sleek vessel unlike anything in Ketheri records. Where Ketheri ships were angular and imposing, bristling with obvious weapon emplacements, this ship was smooth and streamlined, its hull seemingly unmarred by external armaments. It was smaller than the Eternal Dominion, perhaps a third of its size, but something about its design spoke of efficiency and purpose. "Life signs?" Vexthor inquired, his upper eyes narrowing as he studied the vessel. "Confirmed, High Admiral. Carbon-based organisms, Bictal. Internal temperature suggests warm-blooded mammals." Krell's voice carried a note of disdain. The Ketheri had long since concluded that cold-blooded species were superior, their biology more efficient and controlled. They appear to be investigating the system's outer asteroid belt. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Primitives, then, mining for basic resources. He straightened his ceremonial armor, adorned with the marks of 100 conquered worlds. "Open communications. Let us enlighten them about their new place in the galaxy." The communication system hummed to life, broadcasting in the universal frequencies that all spacefaring races eventually discovered. After a moment, the holographic display flickered, and Vexthor found himself face to face with the alien commander. The being was just as Krell had described. A smooth-skinned mammal with 2 eyes and no visible armor plating. It wore some kind of uniform in dark blue, adorned with symbols Vexthor didn't recognize. But what caught his attention was the creature's expression. Calm, composed, and utterly unafraid. "This is Captain Sarah Drake of the United Earth ship Hyperion." The alien spoke, its words automatically translated by the Ketheri systems. "We are conducting a peaceful scientific survey of this system. Please identify yourself." Vexthor's mandibles spread in what his species considered a smile. "I am High Admiral Vexthor of the Ketheri Empire, master of the Eternal Dominion and conqueror of 100 worlds. Your presence here is now subject to Imperial authority. Surrender your vessel and prepare for boarding. Resist, and you will be destroyed." He expected fear, panic, or at least concern from the alien captain. Instead, Sarah Drake's expression remained unchanged, save for a slight raise of her upper facial hair strips. "High Admiral," she replied, her tone measured but firm, "I recommend you check your sensors again. More carefully this time." Something in her voice made Vexthor's scales bristle. "First Observer, full scan of the human vessel." Krell's fingers flew across her console, but before she could complete the scan, alarms blared across the command deck. "High Admiral, energy signatures appearing all around us. They're coming out of nowhere." The holographic display expanded, and Vexthor's 4 eyes widened in shock. Where moments ago there had been only the single human ship, now dozens of objects were appearing, their sensor signatures previously masked by some technology the Ketheri had never encountered. They weren't ships, they were platforms, defensive installations that had been cloaked in waiting. "As I said," Drake continued, still maddeningly calm, "we are conducting a survey. Those are automated research stations, gathering data about this system's unique stellar phenomena. They're heavily armed, of course, for protection against space debris." Vexthor's mind raced. The humans hadn't just happened upon this system. They'd been here long enough to set up an entire network of hidden defenses. And if they had this kind of technology, "You seem surprised, High Admiral," Drake observed. "Did you assume that because we don't build our ships to look threatening, we don't know how to defend ourselves? Humanity learned long ago that the best weapons are the ones your enemy doesn't see coming." "Impossible," Vex Thor snarled. "No species could hide such installations from Ketheri sensors. You're bluffing." Drake's expression finally changed, her lips curving slightly upward. "Would you like a demonstration?" Before Vex Thor could respond, one of the platforms rotated, revealing a weapon system unlike anything he'd ever seen. A beam of concentrated energy lanced out, striking the Eternal Dominion's shields. The impact wasn't particularly powerful. Clearly a warning shot, but the energy signature was completely alien, bypassing several layers of their defensive screens as if they weren't even there. "That was at 2% power," Drake informed him. "Shall I show you 10%? Or perhaps we should discuss more productive ways for our species to interact." For the first time in his long military career, High Admiral Vex Thor felt something he'd never experienced before: doubt. This human ship, so deceptively simple in appearance, had just demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist. If they could hide entire weapons platforms from Ketheri sensors, what else were they capable of? "You damaged an Imperial vessel," he said, trying to maintain his authority. "This is an act of war." "No, High Admiral," Drake corrected him. "An act of war was threatening to board a peaceful research vessel. What I did was provide you with valuable data about your shield's vulnerabilities. Free of charge, I might add. Consider it a gesture of goodwill, and a reminder that appearances can be deceiving." The command deck was silent as Vex Thor weighed his options. His military training and Ketheri instincts screamed for him to attack, to crush this impudent species that dared to challenge the Empire. But another part of him, the strategic mind that had helped him rise to High Admiral, urged caution. They knew nothing about these humans or their true capabilities. The smart play would be to retreat, gather information, and return with overwhelming force. But before he could give the order to withdraw, Captain Drake spoke again. "High Admiral, I'm transmitting coordinates for a neutral location where we can meet to discuss diplomatic relations between our peoples. I suggest you take some time to consider whether the Ketheri Empire would benefit more from a war with humanity or an alliance." The transmission ended, leaving Vex Thor staring at the human ship and its network of hidden defenses. In just a few minutes, everything he thought he knew about his empire's superiority had been called into question. These humans were either incredibly confident or incredibly foolish, and given what he'd just witnessed, he suspected it wasn't the latter. "Your orders, High Admiral?" Krell asked, her voice uncertain. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he studied the Hyperion. "Send word to the Imperial Council. Tell them we've encountered something new, something that changes everything." The game had changed, and for the first time in Ketheri history, they weren't the ones making the rules. As Vex Thor watched the human ship resume its survey work, as casual as if the entire confrontation had never happened, he realized that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. And somewhere deep in his warrior's heart, beneath the shock and wounded pride, he felt something unexpected: excitement. Finally, after centuries of easy victories, the Ketheri Empire had found a worthy challenge. The humans had proved themselves clever, technologically advanced, and unafraid to stand their ground. Whatever came next, Vex Thor knew one thing for certain: the age of unchallenged Ketheri dominance was over. The only question was whether they would adapt to this new reality or break themselves against it. The counterattack. Captain Sarah Drake stood in the Hyperion's tactical room, studying the holographic display of Ketheri fleet movements. In the week since their first encounter with High Admiral Vex Thor, the alien empire had been surprisingly quiet. Too quiet. "They're gathering forces here, and here," Lieutenant Commander Chen pointed out, marking 3 star systems that bordered human space. Long-range scans show at least 30 capital ships, with more arriving daily. Drake nodded, her expression thoughtful. The Ketheri were doing exactly what she'd expected, amassing an overwhelming force before returning. It was textbook military doctrine, exactly the kind of strategy that had served them well against less advanced species. But humanity had learned long ago that numbers alone didn't win wars. "How's Project Chimera coming along?" she asked, turning to Dr. Elena Santos, the ship's chief scientist. The physicist's dark eyes sparkled with excitement. "The test runs exceed our most optimistic projections. The Ketheri shield technology we analyzed from our warning shot. We've already adapted it into our defensive systems. But more importantly, we found its fundamental weakness." That was humanity's greatest strength, Drake reflected. Not their technology itself, but their ability to understand, adapt, and improve upon any innovation they encountered. While the Ketheri had spent centuries merely using their advanced technology, humans had never stopped asking how it worked and how it could be better. "Admiral Chen is asking for a status update," Commander Rivera reported from his communication station. "The Security Council wants to know if we should proceed with diplomatic overtures." Drake's lips curved in a slight smile. "Tell them we'll be proceeding with Plan Delta. The Ketheri need to understand exactly who they're dealing with before any meaningful diplomacy can begin." She turned back to the tactical display, expanding the view to show the gathered Ketheri fleet. Their ships were impressive, massive, heavily armed, and built to inspire fear. But that very design philosophy revealed something crucial about their creators. The Ketheri believed that power should be obvious, visible, and overwhelming. They had never learned the art of subtle warfare. "Begin Phase 1, Drake ordered. "Let's show them how humanity fights." Throughout human space, hidden weapons platforms, similar to those that had surprised Vexthor, powered up. But these weren't defensive installations. They were automated attack drones, thousands of them, each carrying technologies that the Ketheri had never encountered. At Drake's command, they began to move, slipping through subspace corridors that human scientists had mapped decades ago. The first indication the Ketheri had that something was wrong came when their long-range communications suddenly failed. Then their sensor networks went dark, creating gaps in their carefully arranged detection grid. By the time they realized they were under attack, it was too late. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Vexthor watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across his fleet. Human vessels were appearing from nowhere, striking with weapons that ignored Ketheri shields, then vanishing before they could be targeted. But these weren't ships. They were drones, autonomous weapons platforms that operated with a level of coordination and precision that seemed impossible. "How are they doing this?" Krell demanded, her scales pale with stress as she tried to track the attacks. "Our sensors can't lock onto them, our weapons can't target them, and our shields might as well not exist." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in agitation. The humans weren't fighting like any species they'd encountered before. There was no grand fleet engagement, no glorious battle line where superior numbers could prevail. Instead, they were being picked apart by an enemy they couldn't even see. "Message from the human vessel Hyperion," one of his officers reported. Text only. It reads, "Impressed yet?" Before Vexthor could respond, a new wave of attacks began. But these were different. Instead of weapons fire, the human drones were emitting some kind of energy field that interfaced directly with Ketheri systems. Across his fleet, ships began powering down, their advanced technology turned against them by an enemy that had needed just days to understand and subvert it. "They're not trying to destroy us," Vexthor realized, his four eyes widening in understanding. "They're showing us how easily they could." A new message appeared. "Ready to talk now, High Admiral." On the Hyperion, Drake watched the Ketheri fleet's desperate attempts to counter their attacks with a mix of satisfaction and sympathy. It was never easy to have one's worldview shattered, to discover that you weren't as advanced or invincible as you believed. But the Ketheri needed to understand that humanity's apparent technological inferiority had been a choice, not a limitation. "They're signaling their surrender," Chen reported, trying to hide a smile. The High Admiral is requesting a direct communication. Drake nodded, straightening her uniform. Put him through. Vexthor's image appeared on the main screen, his proud bearing somewhat diminished but not broken. Captain Drake, he said, his translator conveying a complex mix of emotions. It seems we underestimated your species. A common mistake, Drake replied diplomatically. One that has served us well over the centuries. While other races focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, humanity learned the value of subtlety, of letting our potential enemies underestimate us until it was too late. But why? Vexthor demanded. With this level of technology, you could have conquered half the galaxy by now. Why hide your true capabilities? Drake's expression softened slightly. Because conquest was never our goal, High Admiral. Humanity learned long ago that true power isn't about domination. It's about understanding. Every species we encounter has something to teach us, some innovation or perspective that can help us grow. Even now, your shield technology has already helped us improve our own defenses. She paused, letting that sink in. We could destroy your fleet right now, but we'd rather talk about cooperation. About how the Ketheri Empire and humanity might benefit from working together rather than fighting. After all, there are things lurking in the dark between the stars that might require both our species' strengths to face. Vexthor was silent for a long moment, his tactical mind clearly racing as he processed everything that had happened. When he finally spoke, there was a new note in his voice. Not quite respect, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The Imperial Council will need convincing, he said carefully. Our way of life, our beliefs about our place in the galaxy, these are not easily changed. Drake smiled. Change is never easy, High Admiral, but it's better than extinction. And who knows, perhaps the Ketheri Empire will find that there's more power in cooperation than conquest. As the two commanders began their tentative negotiations, Drake couldn't help but feel optimistic. The Ketheri were proud and militant, yes, but they weren't stupid. They had just been given a clear demonstration of how vulnerable they truly were, and more importantly, a path to becoming stronger through alliance rather than subjugation. It wouldn't be an easy transition, but humanity had plenty of experience helping other species come to terms with their place in a much larger and more complex galaxy than they'd imagined. And sometimes, Drake reflected, the most powerful weapons weren't the ones that destroyed your enemies, but the ones that turned them into friends. Hidden strengths. The imperial archives of the Ketheri Empire were normally silent, a place of reverent study and careful documentation of their species' glorious history. But today, the vast chamber echoed with heated debate as High Admiral Vexthor addressed the Imperial Council. You've all reviewed the data, Vexthor said, his voice carrying across the crystalline chamber. You've seen what these humans are capable of. Yet you still refuse to accept the reality of our situation. First Counselor Merrick, her scales shimmering with age and authority, leaned forward on her elevated platform. What you propose is unprecedented, High Admiral. An alliance? With a species that has humiliated our fleet and challenged our very way of life. That's precisely why we must ally with them, Vexthor countered. Because they could have destroyed us, but chose not to. Because they've shown us just how vulnerable we truly are. He gestured, and the chamber's holographic systems activated, displaying images from the recent confrontation. The Council watched in silence as the human drones systematically dismantled the pride of the Ketheri fleet, their advanced technology making a mockery of defenses that had been thought impregnable. But there's something else, Vexthor continued. Something that makes the humans even more remarkable than their technology. Show them, Doctor. Dr. Senna, the Empire's leading xenoanthropologist, stepped forward. Her research team had spent the past weeks studying everything they could learn about humanity, and what they'd discovered had shaken them to their core. Honored Council, she began, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement. The humans are not what they appear to be. Their technological advancement, impressive as it is is not their true strength. Their power lies in something far more fundamental: their adaptability. The holographic display shifted, showing images of Earth's history. Look at their homeworld. These humans evolved on a death planet, a world of such environmental extremes that by all logic, they should never have survived. Burning deserts and frozen wastelands, crushing ocean depths and oxygen-thin mountain peaks. Their planet actively tries to kill them with earthquakes, volcanoes, and storms that would devastate a Cathari colony. She advanced through the images, showing human settlements in every conceivable environment. But they didn't just survive. They thrived. Where we Cathari need carefully controlled environments to function, humans can adapt to almost anywhere. They don't just endure harsh conditions. They find ways to make them comfortable. First, Counselor Merrick's scales rippled with skepticism. This is fascinating from a scientific perspective, Doctor, but what does it have to do with our current situation? Everything, Vexthor interjected. Because this adaptability extends far beyond their biology. Show them their military history. The display changed again, showing centuries of human warfare. Their weapons, their tactics, their entire approach to conflict. It's constantly evolving, Dr. Senna explained. When they encounter a new threat or technology, they don't just learn to counter it. They improve upon it. The weapons they used against our fleet, many were based on technology they'd encountered from other species, but modified and enhanced in ways the original creators never imagined. And this is why they hide their true capabilities, Vexthor added. Why they let potential enemies underestimate them. Because every conflict teaches them something new, makes them stronger. The humans don't need to conquer the galaxy. They're content to wait, to learn, to adapt. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Cathari had spent centuries believing that their technological superiority made them invincible, but here was a species that viewed technology not as a fixed advantage, but as a constantly evolving tool. There's more, Dr. Senna said quietly. Their social structures, their governments, their very cultures, they're all designed to change, to adapt to new circumstances. Where we Cathari pride ourselves on our unchanging traditions, the humans embrace change as a source of strength. She brought up new images showing the diverse range of human societies and cultures. They don't enforce uniformity like we do. They allow different ideas, different ways of living, different approaches to problems. And somehow, this chaos, this constant competition of ideas, drives them to achieve things that should be impossible. First, Counselor Merrick rose from her seat, her ancient eyes studying the images of humanity's achievements. You're suggesting that our very strength, our stability, our adherence to tradition, might be our greatest weakness. I'm suggesting, Vexthor replied carefully, that perhaps we have something to learn from the humans. Their offer of alliance isn't just about sharing technology or avoiding conflict. It's an opportunity to understand a fundamentally different way of thinking about power and progress. The council chamber erupted in discussion, countless voices arguing about the implications of what they'd learned. But Vexthor noticed that the tone had changed. The initial dismissal and outrage were giving way to curiosity, to questions about what the Cathari might gain from closer contact with humanity. A message chimed on his personal communicator, Captain Drake checking on the council's deliberations. He composed a careful response. They're beginning to understand. Not just what you can do, but why you can do it. The real negotiations can begin now. As he watched the council debate the future of Cathari-human relations, Vexthor felt a strange sensation, a lifting of a weight he hadn't even known he was carrying. For centuries, the Empire had been trapped by its own success, unable to imagine any path forward except conquest and dominance. But now, faced with a species that had turned adaptability itself into a weapon, they were being forced to evolve. Perhaps that, he reflected, was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their technology or their military prowess, but their ability to show other species that change wasn't just possible, but necessary. The Cathari Empire had prided itself on being unchanging, eternal, dominant. Now they were learning that true strength lay not in resisting change, but in embracing it. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Captain Drake smiled as she read Vexthor's message. The real work was just beginning, but the first and hardest step had been taken. The Cathari were starting to ask questions, to challenge their own assumptions. And once a species started down that path, there was no telling what they might become. Unexpected alliance. The emergency meeting chamber aboard the Hyperion hummed with tension as Captain Drake faced her unexpected guests. High Admiral Vexthor and 3 members of the Cathari Imperial Council had arrived without warning, their flagship dropping out of hyperspace practically on top of the human vessel. But it wasn't their sudden appearance that had Drake concerned. It was the fear in their eyes. "We intercepted this transmission 6 hours ago," Vexthor said without preamble, activating a holographic projector. "Our analysts are still trying to decode most of it, but the visual data requires no translation." A hologram showed a massive object moving through deep space, its surface a writhing mass of organic and mechanical components. As they watched, it encountered a small planetary body, probably an asteroid, and simply absorbed it, breaking it down into raw materials that were instantly incorporated into its structure. "The confluence," First Counselor Merrick said, her scales pale with dread. "We thought they were just legends, stories told to frighten young ones about the dangers lurking in deep space. But they're real, and they're heading toward both our territories." Drake studied the footage carefully, her mind racing. "How big is that object?" "Roughly the size of Earth's moon," Dr. Senna replied. "And it's not alone. Our long-range scans have detected at least 3 more, all following the same trajectory. They're moving slowly by our standards, but they're unstoppable. Every attempt to communicate has been ignored, and the few probes we sent to investigate simply vanished." A mechanical organic hive mind, Dr. Santos mused, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her concern, consuming everything in its path to fuel its own growth. Like a virus on a cosmic scale. "More like cancer," Drake corrected. "A virus needs hosts to survive. This just consumes and grows." She turned to Vexthor. "I assume you're here because you've realized neither of our species can face this threat alone." The High Admiral's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. "The Imperial Council has authorized me to formally request an alliance. Not just a peace treaty or trade agreement, but a full military and technological partnership. We need humanity's adaptability, your innovative thinking, and you need our resources, our established infrastructure." Drake couldn't help but smile slightly. Just weeks ago, the Cathari had been ready to conquer humanity. Now they were practically begging for help, but there was no satisfaction in the irony, not with this kind of threat looming. "Commander Chen," she called. "Contact Earth Command. Priority 1. Tell them to implement Protocol Omega." "Protocol Omega?" Vexthor questioned. "Humanity has been preparing for something like this for centuries," Drake explained. "We've encountered enough hostile species to know that the real threats don't announce themselves with warships and demands for surrender. The real threats are the ones that don't even notice us as they consume everything in their path." The holographic display shifted, showing a vast network of hidden facilities and installations throughout human space. "These aren't just defensive platforms like the ones we used against your fleet. They're automated factories, research stations, and emergency shelters. Each one is designed to operate independently if needed, to ensure our species' survival even if we lose entire star systems." The Cathari dignitaries stared at the display in amazement. The scale of human preparation was staggering, especially for a species that appeared so peaceful and unthreatening on the surface. "But that's not all," Drake continued. "Show them Project Phoenix." Dr. Santos stepped forward, bringing up new schematics. "We've been developing weapons specifically designed to combat large-scale technological threats, adaptive nanites that can infect and subvert mechanical systems, quantum disruptors that can unravel the atomic bonds holding structures together. And most importantly, a delivery system that can deploy these weapons through the same subspace corridors we use for FTL travel. The weapons platforms that defeated our fleet, Vexthor realized. They were just a small sample of your true capabilities. Drake nodded. But against something this big, even our most advanced weapons might not be enough. We need your help, your shipyards, your industrial capacity, and most importantly, your knowledge of the galaxy. There could be other species out there facing the same threat, potential allies we don't even know about. First Counselor Merrick stepped forward, her ancient eyes filled with a new respect for humanity. Then let us formalize this alliance immediately. The Ketheri Empire offers all its resources, all its strength to this fight. And humanity offers its technology, its innovations, and its full cooperation. Drake replied. Together, we might actually have a chance. The next few hours were a blur of activity as both sides began coordinating their responses to the threat. Ketheri ships were quickly retrofitted with human stealth systems, while human weapons platforms were modified to interface with Ketheri power sources. Scientists from both species worked together, sharing insights and developing new strategies. But amid the frantic preparations, Drake found a moment to step aside with Vexthor. You know, she said quietly, this alliance would have happened eventually, even without the confluence threat. Humanity has always believed that diversity makes us stronger. Different perspectives, different approaches, different ways of thinking. We need the Ketheri's stability and tradition, just as much as you need our adaptability and innovation. The High Admiral's mandibles shifted in what Drake had learned was a thoughtful expression. Perhaps that's why the confluence is so dangerous, because it represents the opposite of that principle. It doesn't adapt or evolve. It simply consumes and grows, making everything part of itself. Exactly, Drake agreed, which is why we have to stop it. Not just for our own survival, but for the survival of everything that makes our species unique and valuable. As they looked out at the stars, both leaders knew that the coming battle would reshape their civilizations forever. But perhaps that was exactly what both species needed. A reminder that the greatest strength comes not from dominating others, but from learning to work together, combining different strengths and perspectives to face challenges that no one could overcome alone. The confluence was coming, an unstoppable force of consumption and assimilation, but it would find something it had never encountered before. Two radically different species working together, combining the adaptability and innovation of humanity with the strength and stability of the Ketheri Empire. And in that combination, there was hope, not just for survival, but for a future neither species could have imagined on their own. Evolution. 6 months after the formation of the Human-Ketheri Alliance, the combined fleet hung in the darkness of deep space, waiting. The Hyperion, now extensively modified with Ketheri technology, floated alongside the Eternal Dominion. Both ships had been transformed by the collaboration between their species, sleeker, more efficient, and far more powerful than either design could have achieved alone. Captain Drake stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display where 4 massive confluence entities slowly approached. The moon-sized horrors had consumed 3 uninhabited star systems in their relentless advance, but they hadn't yet encountered anything like what awaited them here. All ships report ready, Commander Chen announced. The Ketheri industrial facilities have completed the last batch of modified nanite weapons. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. Drake nodded, opening a channel to Vexthor's ship. High Admiral, shall we show them what our species can do together? The Ketheri commander's image appeared, his 4 eyes gleaming with anticipation. Indeed, Captain. Though I must admit, what we're about to attempt goes against every military doctrine I've ever known. That's exactly why it might work, Drake smiled. The confluence expects resistance, ships, weapons, barriers. It's encountered all of those before and simply absorbed them, but it's never faced an enemy that could think like we do. The plan they'd developed was audacious, combining human ingenuity with Ketheri precision in ways that would have been impossible 6 months ago. As the confluence entities drew closer, the first phase began. Thousands of automated platforms, human design, Ketheri construction, winked into existence around the massive biotechnological monstrosities. But instead of attacking, they began broadcasting on all frequencies, flooding the space around the confluence with a cacophony of signals. "They're responding," Dr. Santos reported excitedly. "The surface structures are shifting, trying to analyze and adapt to the transmissions. Just as we predicted, they can't ignore potential new information." That had been humanity's key insight. The confluence wasn't just consuming matter, it was consuming data, knowledge, technology. It was curious, in its own alien way. And that curiosity could be used against it. Phase 2, Drake ordered. The automated platforms began transmitting new signals, complex mathematical sequences that appeared to contain valuable technological data. The confluence entities slowed their advance, their surfaces rippling as they attempted to process and absorb this new information. "They're fully engaged," Vexthor reported. "Surface defenses are redirecting to data collection, beginning Phase 3. This was where Ketheri precision became crucial. Hidden within the mathematical sequences were carefully crafted computer viruses, designed to exploit the exact way the confluence processed new information. As the entities greedily absorbed the data, they were also absorbing the means of their own destruction. "Infection rates at 60% and climbing," Dr. Santos announced. "The nanites are replicating exactly as planned. The confluence's own absorption mechanisms are spreading them throughout their systems." Drake watched as the massive entities began to shudder, their surfaces no longer flowing smoothly but jerking and spasming as the nanites began their work. The tiny machines, products of both human and Ketheri technology, weren't trying to destroy the confluence. They were reprogramming it, changing its fundamental nature. "Final phase," she commanded. "All ships, execute Protocol Phoenix." The combined fleet sprang into action, their weapons precisely targeting the areas where the confluence entities were most vulnerable. But these weren't normal weapons. They were carrying more nanites, more viruses, more agents of transformation. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the 4 moon-sized entities hung motionless in space, their surfaces no longer writhing but crystallized into intricate, beautiful patterns. "Complete success," Dr. Santos breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "The nanites have completely rewritten their base programming. The confluence entities are no longer designed to consume and absorb. They're now programmed to create and cultivate." "How can we be sure?" Vexthor asked, his voice cautious. "Look," Drake pointed to the tactical display. The transformed entities were already beginning to move, but not toward populated systems. Instead, they were heading for dead worlds, lifeless planets that had never known civilization. And as the combined fleet watched in wonder, they began to see what the reprogrammed confluence was capable of. The first dead world they encountered was transformed not through consumption, but through creation. The entity's vast resources were turned to terraforming, seeding barren worlds with the potential for life. "It's beautiful," First Counselor Merrick whispered, having arrived to witness the outcome. "We didn't just stop them, we changed them, made them into something new." "That's what both our species needed to learn," Drake replied. "The Ketheri had to learn that change isn't always a weakness, and humanity had to learn that sometimes the best solution isn't to destroy a threat, but to transform it." The next few years would see unprecedented cooperation between humans and Ketheri. The success against the confluence had proved beyond doubt that their species were stronger together than apart. Research teams collaborated on new technologies, combining human creativity with Ketheri thoroughness. Cultural exchanges led to fascinating hybrid art forms and philosophies. But perhaps most importantly, both species had evolved. The Ketheri Empire learned to embrace change while maintaining their core strengths, while humanity learned to build on the stability and structure that the Ketheri offered. Together, they began reaching out to other species, sharing their discoveries and building a network of civilizations united not by conquest or fear, but by mutual growth and understanding. And far out in the galaxy, the transformed confluence entities continued their new mission, creating rather than consuming, building rather than destroying. They stood as a testament to what was possible when different species worked together, when the drive to overcome challenges led not to destruction but to transformation. Captain Drake stood at her favorite viewport on the Hyperion, watching a sunset over a newly terraformed world. Beside her, High Admiral Vex Thor's scales shimmered in the dying light. "Did you ever imagine, when we first met, that this is where we'd end up?" she asked. The High Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Never. I thought we were the greatest power in the galaxy. Now I understand that true greatness isn't about power at all. It's about the wisdom to know when to change, when to learn, and when to work together. And that," Drake smiled, "is the greatest evolution of all." As the sun set on another world reborn, the combined fleet of human and Ketheri ships prepared to return home. But home was different now, no longer separate territories marked by borders and suspicion, but a shared space where two species had learned to grow together, facing whatever challenges the galaxy might present with the greatest weapons of all: adaptability, wisdom, and unity. The evolution wasn't over. It never would be. But that was exactly how both species wanted it. For in change and growth, in the constant drive to become something more than they were, they had found their true strength, and the galaxy was all the better for it.